Alrighty, so let's go over what you need to do for the second part of our adventure into the querying, the beginnings of learning now how to write queries. Okay, so what I have open is Canvas. I have open the instructions here, and I have open my code space here. Okay, and this is the way. Now your README file is going to look different than mine, so don't worry about that. So now over here, I would also have open that video file because you're going to end up watching through that. Now again, mine's at a different spot. Don't worry about that. I tell you where to start, which I believe is right here, but that's in the instruction. Okay, so this is how I would have mine set up. But again, multiple screens here is really helpful. Even if those screens are phones or tablets, those can be helpful as well. Okay, so now before we get started following along from 1225 to 2149, what we're going to need to do is acquire a file, which is the long list that you hear him talking about, Carter talk about when he's going over this. So what I'm going to do, and this is really good to just understand what the command that we're about to give to our code space is going to do, but it's a curl command, basically copy whatever's at a particular URL, which is here. So this is the URL for the file that I have placed onto my public repo called files in the W1, and it's called long list. And then this is the what will become the name in my current directory. I can't remember what the -o is. I should look that one up. And then curl is the actual command. So the first thing you want to do here, and before you do this, and this is also one of those do you remember how to do this, is in your code space terminal, make sure your current directory is the querying folder. Okay, so you want to try that on your own. Not a bad thing to know how to do. Right now my current folder in my terminal is not that querying. So do you remember how to get into that from the terminal? Because the reason that's important is the command we're about to do will not copy that file into the correct location if we're not in that location, and the location we want to be in is the querying folder. So if you want to pause here, give it a try. If you don't get it, come back and I'll show you. So I've shown you in this class two ways to do this. One is you can right click here and say open an integrated terminal. Okay, and that's always easy to do, but you can also do, and I believe I've shown this, CD change directory. And in this case, if I type Q and I type tab, what we'll do is the tab, once I do the Q, will look through the list of folders and match based on what I've given it. So it's a nice way to do it, and if I hit enter, then I now am at that directory. Okay, so make sure you are in that location before you do this particular command. So let's go ahead and try this, right? So now you have to and notice how this is also different as far as the content goes, and I'm doing that using, I believe it's called code as a markdown just to show you this. So if I select this whole line, copy this, okay? And then I come over to my code space and I make sure, and by the way, if you're unsure, PWD, current working directory. Okay, it's this right directory, that's where you want to be. This would be your private repo name, not obviously mine. And now when I hit paste here, this rather large command is now going to execute, go out to that location I've given it in the public repo, and then copy that file into this location, giving it the name I've specified. Cool. So just takes a second, very quick, and notice how now I have that DB. Now at this point, I wouldn't try to open that DB. Later we're going to learn how to load an extension to actually do some of the stuff that we're beginning to learn here. But for now, I just wouldn't try to open it. Okay. Hit clear, or I'm going to type clear. And now I have that going. So the last thing to do before setup, actually I'll show you this along the way. But we do want to add another H1, and in this time it'll be querying part 2, because we're going to still use that same query. I didn't specify this here, so it's good. I'll go back and and update this. So in this case, that README file is what I'm talking about. So let's go over here. And now one thing I like to do, you don't have to do this, it's really based on your own preference. I like to actually put my current week at the top. You can put it somewhere else, but I would say part 2. Okay, so now that you have both of these things in there, okay, now I'm not going to walk you through this part because we've already done it, but I'll just tell you, then you would commit this, okay, commit with this right here, okay, and now I'm going to show you this part as well. Okay, so once you have that commit done, remember you don't have to push it, just do your git add, git commit, and then when you're done with all this, you would do your git push. But it's okay if you do your git push right along the way if you're more comfortable. All right, so now one of the things you're going to see when Carter starts going over this is the way he has his terminal set up. And there's various ways to permanently do what we're going to temporarily do in your terminal. But I just want to show you this. So, but along the way, I'm also going to show you how you need to save, and this is called a proof of work file, and it's going to be a text file because for this particular one, we're going to be writing commands on the command line in the SQL subsystem, okay? So in this case, I just want to give you what this will look like. And again, this is probably, yeah, this is somewhere back here. Okay, so let me come back over to my code space. And I'm going to, just for a second, I'm going to drop this just so you can see this, right? Because in this case, we're going to be writing commands, these SQL commands, and I could do this a couple ways. I could actually type SQLite 3 here, and when I do that, notice what happens is it drops me into that subsystem, okay? But one thing you'll see, and then you can get out of it, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one, right? I believe I can type quit. I found that earlier, yeah. So if I drop into the SQL subsystem and I want to get out, I've shown it, I think, as Control D is the other way, possibly. But just dropping into it, I just want you to get used to that. So dropping in and dropping out, right? And by the way, keep an eye over here. Let's do that again. So SQLite 3. And now what happens is, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up, oh, let's see. Oh, okay. So before, when I was playing with this as well, I actually ended up having multiple terminals open. And that was kind of helpful at times as well. So if I hit that little plus, I get a bash, and then I can move between my SQLite command line and the bash, which is where we've been doing the git stuff, okay? So what you're going to be doing in this work is you're going to be actually writing SQL commands. We call these queries, and you're going to be doing it in the SQLite subsystem. Okay, and then as you do them, I'll have you, when you now commit, you're going to commit based on the output that is on the terminal. And I'm going to show you how to create a file there. But for now, I'm just going to quit again. Just good to get in and get out. I'm going to clear this. Notice when I clear, then it drops me back into bash, which is good to know. And if I clear that, then I have 2 bash sessions open, which is fine. And it actually shows me here I have one with that querying subdirectory. In this case, I do not think, yeah, actually you do want to be in this this folder because of the following command that you will do. SQLite 3. And then when you do this, you're going to type the database. And what this does, longlist.db, what this is going to do is it's going to open SQLite 3, the subsystem, and it's going to open it with that database in mind, okay? And the message we were getting before, notice there's actually less output on the command line, is just actually telling you that. It's like, hey, you didn't give me a database. Because generally when you run the subsystem, you also tell it the database, although there's a way to actually read the database from the SQLite system. And notice this is SQLite, and when the prompt comes, it's just SQL. So this is 3 and this is just light. And this just tells you you're in the subsystem. And you could type help to see some of the commands. That's not a bad idea. I'm going to type clear again. Oh, and if this happens, this has happened to me a couple times, where what happens is when I type the clear command was actually only for the bash and not for the SQLite. So I'm be like, oh yeah, how do I, and you're going to see this in a minute. Oh, actually, that's not even the right one. Let me see, is it Control D? No, that's not the one either. Okay, I'm going to pause a second and find the one I'm looking for. So that was a fun little journey I took because, and let me just explain it along the way. What I was doing was when I was typing something like clear, because I was in the SQLite subdirectory, SQLite didn't actually understand that command, okay? And so when it does this dot, 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 okay, caret, it actually means, hey, you didn't finish your command. And you're going to see this actually as we write longer query statements. So just helping you, because I know for me I got to spend a little time diving into how to do this. And because part of it was just to get out of this little subsystem, and you can kind of see, and this is a very common thing, Stack Overflow. You could also ask ChatGPT or whatever your favorite LLM is in this case. But let me just show you what basically you can do is if you see that, you can just hit semicolon because it's waiting for the end of the query. It's thinking you have a long query, and so then when you do that, it gets you out of there, and then it says, hey, clear was not one of those. And then I did some searching to find out that for me to clear, okay, so there's a difference between line continuation and then to clear it, I ended up having to do Control L on the Mac, and I believe you can search for the same thing, and it's probably the same thing on Windows, Control L to clear that. Okay, so that was just me kind of helping you navigate, right, the idea of the SQLite. So now when we start writing commands, which you will do, right, so like select is you always start there, and you're going to learn more about this, right? So this is where, and then you go from long list, right? So I think right here I get put semicolon. All right, so in this case now I'm in the SQLite, I'm writing my first, in this case, query, and I'm doing the query at the command line. We're going to learn later how to actually do these by saving these queries in a file, and I think I'll actually do that next week. But this week I'm just going to have you do it this way. Okay, and so notice how this content comes out. It doesn't look as nice, and the whole reason I was heading into this was to show you this box right here, right? And this is a command that when you do it on the command line, let me come back to my code space. Before I run my query, and I'm just going to paste this in here, okay? I'm going to hit that, and I'm going to use my up arrow that brings back, I hit my up arrow twice, that brings back the last query, or in this case the command I ran. I hit enter, then, and you don't really see it as nicely because my screen resolution is set pretty high, but in that case you can at least see that you do get that nicer output. And again, you don't see mine that nicely is because of that. Okay, so what I've shown you here is just kind of how to navigate the SQL, so in this startup file, okay? So hopefully you've already done your commit. This gives you that. And by the way, anytime you stop the terminal, in this case, you have to before you put your queries in, if you want it formatted with that box, you have to do that as well. All right, so now let's talk about the work, okay? And this will be, so now that you've watched my setup video, which we're still in the middle of, and then you'll start at 12:25 and do the same terminal commands, right? And once you reach 1643, right, then you're going to select your command prompt output. And I should say terminal here. I should say command terminal output, but hopefully I'll show you it'll make more sense. And then what you're going to do is create a new file in your querying folder, and you're going to name it proof POW, which is proof of work, and then this is the first one, okay? And you're going to paste the terminal output, this is where I should have been consistent with the terms, into that file, and then commit with terminal output from select command. Okay, so let me, now that I've talked about it, let's actually do it. Again, I haven't done all the commands. That's the part that you're going to do here. right? So I'm going to assume at this point I've done all of the different commands. I've created that output. I've run all the different versions or different ways Carter's shown us how to do the select, which is great. And then what you do, and this will feel a little awkward maybe, but I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Right, so where I started on this particular one, now I'm not going to include the stuff that I didn't use the box from, but in this case I maybe start from here. If you didn't have the box in there, I wouldn't. And I'm just click, drag, hold, and I'm dragging down to select all that content. Okay, so this is your proof of work. This is basically showing you followed along with the video. Okay, because sometimes it's easy just to listen, but you actually want to do these commands to get that muscle memory. So now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a new file in this query folder. I'm going to call it POW proof of work 1.txt. Okay, and when I do that, that new file then gets created. Right, I paste it in there. Cool, right? So now that is pasted in there in that file, right? And now what I can do, because I haven't modified my README file, but what I have done, right, is I've done that work, and now I can do my commit message that says terminal output from the select command, right? So then you'll continue on following along, right? And then I say listen to the questions. So when I say listen to the questions, and what you want to do is update it in your README file, right? So you do want to add a little bit of content in this one in your README file. We went over that last time, so I'm not going to repeat. And then you would put questions in style, and then continue at 1937. Use the limit command once you reach 2149, which is, I believe, where we end, right? Then you'll also copy that output showing that you did those commands, and then you would terminal output from limit command. Okay, so you will in this case have 1, 2, 3, 4 commits that you will make. Okay, I'm going to come back over here. Now again, I don't have all those files in here, but you will when you're done. So I'm going to clear, Control L, my terminal. Now what could happen as well, and I should have mentioned this earlier, as you create your next one, your POW2, when you just do that clear command, notice what happens is that other stuff is there. So sometimes it's hard to know because all I want is just the output from that one section. So I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but what I might do, and this could be good practice for now, we'll find better ways later, is in order to clear that history, which I bet there's a command for doing it, but easily I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I think I can just do quit here. Good. So if I do that and then I go back into SQLite 3 with my long list DB, then I do lose that history as far as the output goes, but I don't lose and all I'm doing here is I'm using my up arrow and my down arrow to cycle through, so I don't have to recopy some of that stuff. Again, the reason I'm showing you this idea is so that when you go to create this second proof of work file from doing the work from 16 to 21, you do have a commit here, okay? Oh yeah, I didn't have you create the file though. Oh no, in this case this is content, that's why. Okay, so the reason this file is here is because of the comment, the question, and style in that case. And then when we pick it up at 1937 to the end, that's when we're writing some more command line, and that's where we create that POW2 text, and then you can see the difference here in the commit messages. Okay, and then commit your history. Now again, so at this point I've gone over this, so just to give you the heads up, once you get all that done, I could leave this SQLite terminal up. I could run over to my bash once I have all the required content in the README file. I have a POW2.txt. That long list doesn't have to change, and then I would do git add star. Now you're doing this before you do your commits. I'm just shortcutting it here, right? Now I'm just going to be consistent and say that would be the last one you'd be doing. Okay. Okay. So then we get git commit, right? And then this time, because I'm done, I would do a git push. All right, so then I would want to, and I'm not going to show you this, but you hopefully know by now how to give me the commit history for that querying folder that in this case will have two new files, and 4 commits. Okay, and you can check out here how I grade it. I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.